Welcome back to the Untouchaballs podcast. Caden and Leo here. Caden, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good, Max. How about yourself?
I am not doing well because the Houston Cougars unfortunately just fell to the Florida Gators in the national championship. Caden, your early thoughts?
Yeah, we're gonna get to that game in a minute. Before that, we're gonna recap these final four games, what we saw on Saturday, before getting to what we just got finished witnessing, seeing just like a short hour ago at this point. So yeah, on Saturday in the final four, we had the first matchup between the Florida Gators and the Auburn Tigers, where Florida was able to pull out a 79-73 victory after a dominating second half over Auburn.
Yeah, this was a really exciting matchup, Caden, but ultimately, again, like you said, in the end, Florida ultimately was able to pull through. This is, a matchup I didn't see occurring in the Final Four. I did have Michigan State coming in, as we had previously talked about in the earlier episode. But credit to Florida, man. They came in playing well. They came in playing energized. They ran through that SEC tournament, Caden, and they, brought that same momentum into March Madness, and that was what they were able to continue to do all the way through that Final Four game. What did you see from Florida during that one, Caden?
So yeah, I mean, we saw in that first half that Florida defense just really wasn't there. They're letting Auburn kind of score at will. Gianni Broom was doing his thing. Denver Jones, Baker Mazzara, and that then the kind of like the script flipped in the second half. They remembered they were Florida. They had one of these better defenses in the league. They were getting stops, a lot of stops, especially early in that half when they were down to help kind of get that comeback, keep it close, and end up help building that lead. We saw Walter Clayton get 34 points in that game. M- Martin was 17. Like they were able to show up and show up big. It's a team though that also they missed 9 free throws. They did not shoot well from the charity stripe, but they were able to get it done in the other facets of the game. That they were able to get this victory over Auburn.
Definitely, and it was much credit to them. They took care of business. Now on the other side, Caden, we had a game that I thought was better. I had actually probably the most wild finish of one of the most recent Final Four. So let's hop it straight into that one. You look like you got a pretty big heavy reaction there.
Yeah, so the absolute choke job by Duke in this game against Houston. They were up as many as 14 in this game. They were up 9 with 3 minutes to play. Let's see. They were tied, and oh no, they're down on the free throw. Good old Cooper Flag fouls Houston to give them the two
Yes,
free
he does.
throws. Good old Tugger the tugboat makes a big putback slam. And in the end, the Houston Cougars are advancing because Duke gave them this game.
Whoa, okay. Now this is where we diverge. Duke did not give them anything. Houston went in there and they took it with their defense, with their aggression, with their ball trapping skills. They went in there and they got it done. All right, I told you when push comes to shove, Houston was going to get it done. All right, Cooper Flag. Don't forget he bricked the game-winning shot when there was still time on the clock. Ultimately, Duke ended up with the ball again with another opportunity to go ahead and win the game. And what happened? Houston's defense happened. Smothered, right? Trapped the ball, and they couldn't get a clean look. Ended up having to heave one up in the final minutes. No bueno. Setting up Monday's big championship showdown, Caden. It was the Florida Gators. It was the Houston Cougars, which the team you picked Florida won. What'd you think?
Yeah, this is a game where it started off, pretty close, pretty back and forth. We were seeing players in on Florida, like especially kind of scoring, like they were leading the scoring that you weren't kind of expecting. As Walter Clayton was held scoreless in this first half, we were seeing players like Richard, like Martin, like Condon come through with the scoring for this Florida team here in the first half. to keep them up there, up pace there with that Houston Cougars offense. And they're only down 3.5. They're looking good. They come out at half though, and Houston is looking like the better team. They're looking like they're about to take control of this national championship and kind of ride their way to a victory. Then Florida,
No, 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 no,
them
no, 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 no,
Gators.
no, 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 no. Then the officiating crew in San Antonio decides to put everyone for the Houston Cougars in foul trouble, and all of a sudden pop out with 3 fouls in 9 seconds of gameplay to put Tugler and to put who else was in foul trouble, Caden? Put not only Tugler but to put Roberts in foul trouble, right? And I think even Milos Uzan and Eldrick Pryor both were also, and Eldrick Pryor for sure, all the way up in the end, were all in foul trouble. So you have four of Houston's top key players being taken away in the clutchest moments, Caden, because of this gritty official who put Florida in the double bonus with over 8.5 minutes left in the game. How do you go from almost no fouls called in the first half to all of a sudden Houston's up to their biggest lead at 12 in the game, and now we want to start calling fouls? And now we're not letting them play. Florida's allowed to do whatever they want in the defensive end. They could push up on Houston. They can hand check. They can play physical. But when Houston comes and does it on the other end and tries to impose their own will, we're just calling every foul in the book. Ridiculous, Caden. I did not like it. I didn't like it coming down to the end. But guess what? No matter what, Houston still had the ball with a chance to win at the end of the game, right? No shot clock. They had a possession. Can't even get a shot up. So credit to Florida. This game was pretty fantastic, right? It was electrifying. These last three games were a lot better than everything we saw in this entire national championship. But I am sick to my stomach.
Okay, yeah, so I got I guess a couple things to say about those statements that were made by you right there.
All factual.
So that's what happened in your eyes. And now looking at it through a different lens,
The
where
lens that you're
yes,
driving,
yes, Houston, they're up 12, their biggest lead of the game. And that's when you put it, the refs got all foul crazy and wanted to call every little push and shove only by Houston. But when you look at it and you look at those fouls and what was being called, they were fouls by the rules, the letter, the law of the sport of basketball. Those were fouls. Those
okay,
constituted
kid,
the whistle of the
it was
referee.
that was the entire play, the first half by both teams, Caden, by both teams. All right, let's get that clear. And these refs didn't want to start calling it until the very last quarter of the game, which is ridiculous. You let the players play it out. You can't be swallowing your whistle the whole game, and then just because it's the final last 10 minutes, now you want to start throwing everything out there.
No, the players were playing it out. The players were still playing it out. Houston went a little above playing it out, though. They went a little above that. And that's what caused those whistles to get moved from those pockets and start getting blown.
I think we saw a Houston team that was out physicaling Florida, that was dominating them, and Florida needed help from the refs. No, but in all seriousness, Caden, you got to credit the Florida Gators. They came out, they played a very solid game. This one they went under the under of 140 total points that was set on the line at DraftKings at the time. As I kind of thought it would, with it being two very good defensive teams. But once again, that final possession, Florida's smothering defense, they were able to repel and come out on top. And now, Caden, they have three national titles in basketball and three national titles in football. What say you?
What say I is even though the rest of my bracket was straight god awful and needs to be kind of forgotten about and burned and locked away forever, The one thing I did say, the one thing I was most confident on in this tournament was my champion, the actual national champion, Florida Gators. They went through this gauntlet. They came out on top, and at least I have that to hang my hat on.
Yeah, this was kind of unfortunately a pretty chalk tournament. Again,
So chalk, so chalk.
I know you had your thoughts on that, Caden. What else would you have to say? Final thoughts, concerns from this tournament? Anything you want to get out there? Biggest moments, favorite memories, a favorite player, game, or something? Seen a lot of basketball over the last couple months.
Yeah, so not my favorite tournament in recent memory, I'd say. It was, yeah, like I said, very chalk tourney. We're seeing not many of these big kind of crazy upsets. We saw no 13 seed or higher win this year for the first time in 6 or 7 years. Just nothing crazy happened. We only saw one buzzer beater, and like that was a good game and all, but I don't think that was anything like my favorite game of this tourney. But I mean, favorite game of the tourney. There's a couple contenders. I do think that Houston Duke game for sure has to be up there as one of these best games when we were just kind of talking about earlier. The kind of Duke looked like they were in control, up by as many as like 14, just for them to come back and win this game, take it like and propel themselves to the national championship. I think that proves like that was one of these best games of the tournament. I think another one of those games though was in the Sweet 16 between Texas Tech and Arkansas, where Arkansas is on this little bit of a Cinderella run, looking like they might make the Elite Eight as a 10 seed with John Calipari behind the helm. And Texas Tech makes a run in the second half to send it to overtime, with Texas Tech being able to just eke it out in OT. I think those two were probably in my eyes the best two games we were witness to in this year's tournament.
Yeah, Caden, there were definitely a lot of games, as you mentioned, that went down to the wire. I thought the national championship, other than, some questionable calls there late, on my end of the officiating. I thought it was a very competitive and exciting game. Again, both of those Final Four games. I mean, one of those Final Four games was really good. The other one was meh. But we had the McNeese story with Amir Oricon way early in the first round. Some different storylines. BYU in their 3-point shooting, they were able to get hot. We saw Alabama light up, the scoreboard with some 3-point shooting, setting some historical marks, some historical records. Caden, did you have a favorite player, I guess, from this tournament that you saw or witnessed?
Ooh, a favorite player. Yeah, I mean, I guess my answer is probably just gonna be as chalk as this tournament. But my favorite player of the tournament was Walter Clayton of Florida. I think what he was able to do for this Gators team offensively, kind of carry the load for them, like in that Final Four game against Auburn to score 34, to be able to ice the game down the stretch with some big clutch threes fading away, with some big clutch free throws. I think he was like just the best player we saw in this tournament.
And I'll go ahead and pick a team from the opposition side of Houston, as I've been so heavily on them. Again, I'm sad because I was so high on them winning this national championship, and they came so close the final seconds. But I will go LJ Cryer. I think he was phenomenal. I think he was that vocal leader within Houston, and he was trying to become the first player ever to win a national championship for two different teams. Came up just short, Caden. But in the end, you were right. Florida gets the dub. And as horrible as your bracket was, that's got to feel good.
That part, it helps just a little bit. Just it helps just enough.
And our good friend Troff, who is now the social media manager, if you guys have noticed. So if you've seen and you liked what we've been putting out there, I hope you appreciate it. And he should be making a few appearances, but he was the winner of the bracket for those of you who were curious.
He actually predicted the Florida over Houston Natty, the only one in our Untouchaballs pool to have that exact thing. He was one of 5 people with Florida, but he had that perfect matchup. It was between Mex and Choff. Florida won. Choff wins our pool. Mex takes second.
It's an unfortunate reality, but we appreciate you all for following throughout all of this March Madness coverage that we've had here on Untouchaballs. We thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all next time.